Hi, good morning. Welcome to Business Lens on Rapid TV. My name is Faith Daffy Joseph. As always, we get to look at headlines making the rounds in the world of business, the economy, and finance. Today is not different, and some of the very interesting headlines we're going to be talking about. The CBN has established a limit for POS operators. What is that about? I'll break it down for you today. As well, the World Bank has released a report on Nigeria, and some of the things that they have observed are not things that the Nigerian government totally agrees with. In fact, they talked about 139 million Nigerians slipping into poverty again, and the federal government has come out to dispute that. So we'll tell you more about that too. Now, off the back of what we discussed on Monday, talking about, Senator Adams Oshiomhole, former Labour leader, talking about how Pengasyn should think more about the country and things like that. Well, NUPENG has come out to declare him a persona non grata. Okay, so that's interesting. I have in the studio to help us unpack this, as always, Mr. Daniel Offa is our global financial market analyst. Good to have you.
Good morning, Faith. It's good to be here again.
Okay, so let's start with, the POS thing that the CBN has put out. So the CBN is putting a limit on what POS merchants can do. I mean, the CBN has started doing a lot of, a regulation, where POS operators are concerned, whether you're looking at the geotagging that the CBN introduced last month, or you're looking at now saying that POS agents' daily transaction is going to be pegged at 1.2 million. So that is something that, a lot of people are looking at, like, okay, so what exactly is the meaning of this? Why is the CBN going through all of this? They're talking about geotagging. In fact, there's a fine. If you're not geotagged, there's a 5 million naira minimum penalty if you fail to geotag your POS. So, of course, that is, going on to, the organizations or the financial institutions that own these POS machines, right? And then you now have the CBN coming up to now say, again, minimum is 5 million. It goes up to 20 million, actually. That's quite a bit. And then, you now also have this particular one talking about 1.2 million as their limits for their transactions. So let's talk about what all of this means and why the CBN is not focused on POS merchants or agents. We see there's POS every
Almost
corner.
Exactly.
So why do you think CBN is focusing on this so much?
Two reasons, Faith. I think that the first one is what the CBN was really charged with at the beginning of the current dispensation. We had a lot of cash outside of the banking system. We had issues with properly managing our money supply. Liquidity management was chaotic, and I think one of the biggest wins of current CBN is that it's really working towards ensuring proper liquidity management, right? Because it is the body in charge of regulating the financial sector, ensuring financial stability. It is key that liquidity conversations is something that you are the top of, and that is one of the things that one of the major avenues of cash leaving the banking sector not returning is the POS, right? We've seen the growth of the POS business in the last 3, 4, 5 years. It's a function of the fact that it can be a one-way out conversation. They go to the banks, they take out funds, and they don't bring it back, because then they just keep it outside of the banking system as long as possible. So now, with capping their transactions, it also achieves another thing, which is security, right? We've seen a lot of incidents, right, where kidnappings and so many vices that it goes through the POS, and that is all. You don't get it; just goes off, and you can't track those monies again. So the geotagging is solving that, right? You can basically track them in real time, and also the limit is also there, because then, do you know how many for you to be able to get the 100 million out of the banking system through the POS, you need about 100 POS, which is and there's another one again even that talks about the fact that if the POS owners are owing in any financial institution, they cannot own a POS. Those regulations are just there to manage the liquidity. I've understood the fact that if you want to make liquidity if you want to really manage liquidity, one of the things is to set very high, very considerable level of limits, so that people don't carry a lot of cash around, right? So if people can carry cash around, then it solves that problem.
Because the POS is like a weak link when it comes to managing cash outside of the banks or managing liquidity. So this is
lack
basically
of control has really made it chaotic. It's just spiraling out of control. Some people can own POS and they don't even do a POS business, right? So now that is no longer possible, because then with the geotagging, except all these regulations are not followed through. If they are followed through, we have solved almost 30-40% of our liquidity issue. Of course, that is for outside of the banks. For inside of the bank, we've seen the CRR, the CBN increasing the MPC increasing the CRR to about for non-TSC to about maybe 75%. So you can't really play a lot around cash and moving cash out of the system anymore. And that is what, if you've seen advanced contracts, is what they've all done. In fact, there's a limit to what you can even hold as cash in some certain countries without heavy penalties, without people checking background checks and all.
But even with the CBN doing this, it's commendable, because if you look at I'm going to get to my question very quickly, but I just want to look at the stats. According to the numbers that we have, in March 2025 this year, there are about 8.36 million registered POS terminals, right? 5.9 of them actively deployed. That is 109.46% rise from the same time last year, right? In fact, the IMF is estimating that there are 1,600 POS operators per square kilometer in Nigeria. That is a lot, actually. So you definitely have to put some rein in them, because everybody just feels like, you know what, I don't have a job, I just go get POS and become a merchant.
The whole idea was never really about to increase cash. Like, I think it was always about us being able to even push a cashless society. But this has become a cash festival.
That's what I'm saying now. So if you are putting a limit, number one, not just putting a limit, you're also talking about geotagging. You're basically making sure that there's a lot of regulation and control where they are concerned. So that may be good for your liquidity issue. That may be good for trying to translate to cashless. But do we have all we need to actually have a cashless society? When you look at the fact that, there's still a lot of Nigerians in the informal economy, there's still a number of them that are not quite as literate to operate bank accounts the way that they should. Even though, yes, there's simplified bank accounts now that people can operate without a lot of fuss. But things like, the M-Pesa in Kenya and stuff like that, mobile money started in Nigeria, but I don't think it's really kicked off the way it should. So shouldn't we also be looking at making sure that we establish those before you start to totally cut off things like this and putting those regulations in place?
Okay, so I think I've like sat down, right, and looked at, why is M-Pesa not working in Nigeria? And I think it's because of the existing infrastructure. Right. Before now, the banks have been the ones trying to push. So, a system like M-Pesa is almost like you are trying to take out the traditional banks out of the equation. Right. They're also trying to expand. Everybody's trying to. So even we've seen what even companies like Moneypoint have done in terms of even expanding. You get the range when it comes to POS conversions, for example. But one thing that I've seen in the last 1 year, right, that is becoming prominent, right, is the fact that we are seeing more of merchant, actual business owners owning more of POS, right, and that is that was the whole idea from the get-go, right. So that means that you can actually now go to those businesses. In fact, the smallest of the smallest. You can imagine smallest kiosk now they are trying to get POS, so that what happens is that you really don't need to take cash to them anymore. You just do a transaction. Those ones. If that would eventually happens, then it solves the problem that we're trying to actually do, right? So what our existing POS infrastructure simply became like this because ATMs failed to do what ATMs are meant to do, right? So that was the problem, right? And as soon as these laws come in and it comes into effect, and you cannot transact more than 1 point, that means that you better just have a POS as a business. Because if your customer, for example, wants to buy something of over 5 million or more than that, and before you need to go and get you cash you get from a POS to do that. Now you just need to own a POS, and the person does the transaction right there and then.
Yeah.
So it solves that. So one way or the other, what will happen if this is followed through, happen in the next 1 to 3 years is that we'll see more POS, but it will be actual businesses that receive cash, right, that would actually have the POS.
Because I remember just trying to do a transfer from POS merchants. I didn't want the cash, so I just told her, so I want to transfer from this account and I want to transfer to this account, and they're able to do
of
it.
course,
Very,
of course,
very
of course. So those are things that would definitely get to happen at the end of the day when people realize that the laws are limiting their ability to actually hold a lot of cash.
Okay, so let's quickly talk about what is going on with well, so it starts off at the commission that, of course, you had the senator, from Edo State criticizing Pengasing over what they did, how they escalated their issue with the Dangote refinery, and he criticized their handling of it. But what is now very interesting is that you have NUPENG responding. So remember that NUPENG has had their own running with Dangote refinery, so I'm not surprised that they decided to respond to this. So NUPENG, which is the Nigerian Union of Petroleum and Natural Gas Workers, says it will no longer participate in any labor-related events involving Adams Oshiomhole, and saying that he was declared a persona non grata. And they also called him Judas Iscariot to the labor movement in Nigeria. And of course, the background of this is that Senator Adams Oshiomhole, former governor of Edo State, was also, in fact, I think probably the biggest or most prominent labor leader that we had, in this republic. So, and yes, there was a lot of strikes during his time too. But, he came out to denounce the way Pengasing was handling this and saying that they escalated this, which is leading to a nationwide shutdown of oil facilities, and saying that it is hasty and unfair to other workers as well. So now you have the president of NUPENG expressing disappointment in his remarks. They said it's a persona non grata. They'll not attend any labor events that he's part of, and he said he's a Judas Iscariot. That's like a traitor to labor principles and labor union. But let's also just expand this commission past just their barbs, right, and look at the fact that we have petrol queues returning to Abuja, which is part of what I was trying to bring up last week. That yes, you want to make a point, you can feel aggrieved that your members are going through this, but do all Nigerians have to suffer? I mean, there are queues now in Abuja because stations have run out of stock, right? And they need to do business. And then you're now also seeing that we're having queues expand, we're having black market return. And this is for a country that you have production of petrol. We have a refinery now. And so because you can't deal with your problems with the refinery and nobody can see anything, they will declare persona non grata, everybody else has to suffer.
So, well, I think the thing is...
You like queuing?
So, queuing, right, is an effect of a particular issue. I think what we're trying to do is we're really not talking about the real issue that brought us here.
So the real issue is not the queue. Yeah, not queuing is not a problem. It's not a real issue.
Okay, so strike actions, for example, that the labor unions will carry out, right, would also cost economies billions of dollars on a daily of inactivity. It happens. That is the effect of a strike. That's the effect of a union's activity.
So we should embrace it.
So what we should be talking about is what caused the issues. I've not seen in recent times, I've not seen any action from Pengasing in recent times, even when we were doing subsidies and it was so ineffective. We've not seen. I've seen more of NUPENG. I've seen NUPENG in action. I've seen NUPENG say we are not going to move and in with our tankers, but I've not seen Pengasing, right? So if Pengasing is coming out to do something like this, why not let us ask why? What is the real issue?
Why. You're
exactly. So why is that issue not really being solved? Because so the effect.
Dangote is saying, I don't want your people in my company anymore. So, I will pay them 5 years salary. Just go. Don't sabotage my organization.
So the effect of what a union will carry out shouldn't necessarily be. For example, I was looking at what was happening in France last week. We had 200,000 people. The union leaders brought about 200,000 people to the streets, right, to cripple economic activity in France, right? Why is somebody saying?
Well, also because if you I think it's apples and oranges, because if you look at the economy in France, you also can see that There's not a lot of them that are still in the informal, sector. You can see that if it affects this person, it probably affects you too, right? But this doesn't directly affect people here. So basically, you are saying that you must all suffer from what we are going through.
So see it this way, right? Now, see it this way. If 200,000 people are on the streets, a lot of people are not able to go to work. People that, for example, earn wages daily are unable to feed for that day, because that is the effect of the decision of union leaders to bring 200,000 people out on the streets, right? Same thing with Pengassin. Pengassin did not cripple our oil sector in Coke. What they simply did was told their members to stop. So if the members are not working and it cripples the economy, that means that it is the job of those leaders in that sectors that should take charge of, say, if this is wrong, right? For example, 2023, for example, the NLC head wanted to also cripple the Nigerian economy because of the minimum wage conversation. And before it happened, the president called them for a meeting. Before we knew it, before we could say Jack, the strike was called off, and everything was back to normal.
You're faulting the people in charge of this thing.
Exactly. So if you know that these are two elephants, Pengassin will definitely respond to 800 employees sack. It's a fact. They will definitely respond. So if they're going to respond, and you know what the effect of the response can be on your energy security, you would attack it from the get-go. So no matter how you spin it. So
you're telling us, do not blame Pengassin.
No, I can't
blame that.
I can't blame.
You should blame the people who are supposed to be.
I can't blame Pengassin for responding to an action that affected its members. So so the first things first is to first ask, why did Dangote do that? Nobody has really asked that question, because what he's still giving is that I don't want to.
He said sabotage. Exactly. That they're sabotaging his operations.
Is there a proof of sabotage? So if we cannot, this is the thing, if you cannot hold those businesses accountable for actions they take because they are big in quotes, then we should not also be blaming the unions that respond to the action the best way they feel everybody will listen to them. How would Pengassin, who would have listened to Pengassin? Pengassin did not take that action. Nobody would have just left matter and let other people that earn a living will just wake up and they don't have a job anymore and nobody will say anything. So if union is responding the best way it feels it can respond, it is now left for people, stakeholders in that sector, to take action. Because no matter what happens with what Pengassin has done, everybody, even the global community, is now notified, right? So now, even if Dangote has gotten away with 800, it most likely cannot do it again.
You must cannot do it again, but then also your economy is crippled. You can't do anything.
Economy will be crippled when people.
You have to queue to get fuel.
So if it's a smaller,
even though you now produce fuel,
it's a part of it's called collateral damage.
Are you a union member?
No, I'm not. I also buy. I'm also queuing for petrol.
Are you sure?
But I realized that.
Or your Pengassin members like, don't worry. Please speak for us. Let's get you fuel.
Even Pengassin members are queuing for fuel. So the thing is, at the end of the day, all right, because that's why I accept them calling Adams Oshiomhole, right, persona non grata, because he was one of the most rash NLC presidents we've had. Right, we've had nothing less than 10 or 11 strikes, days, not hours, days of conversation, days we shut down the economy and nothing will happen. In fact, they were more united, so it was terrible, right? So because now you're a politician under the ruling party, you are coming to suddenly say, oh, this businesses is meant to, but why not? Let's address. If you're addressing the issues of the union, then I would Then you're saying okay, but this is key to our. It's a key concept, but you're not even addressing what caused them to come out like that, to be that aggressive. Because if it was not that bad, right? I am certain even some members will say, again, it won't be conformed. It won't be a uniform decision. It won't be a uniform activity from the members. But the members, everybody went all out.
Union members are always
no. Uniform. But for example, right? When ASUU was in the thick of it, right? Some chapters will say we're not conforming yet. We're not going to join here. We're going to wait for what's happening. But for the first time, we are seeing them, everybody across board. That means that it's not
for the first time. It's not for the first time.
People are seeing it as an attack.
Because usually when NLC goes on strike, everybody does.
People are seeing it on an attack on the big investor. But why is the big investor making decisions?
It's an attack on the big investor who is also employing a lot of people aside Pengassin people. Because basically now it's been looked at like Pengassin is bigger than everything else going on in Nigeria. And that's not fair. Let's move on from that conversation because it's selfish what they're doing. But, I don't want to queue for fuel. Let's talk about this report very quickly before we go on the break. This new report by International Air Transport Association, the IATA, they're saying that, talking about the value of air transport in Nigeria, revealed that Nigerians must work an average of 37.6 days to afford a plane ticket, right? This is amazing. You have to work an average of 37.6 days. That is not even for all Nigerians, some Nigerians, right? And this is coming despite a 43% drop in real airfares in 2011 and 2023, right? So IATA is noting that globally, the cost of flying has fallen by 70% over the past 50 years, making air travel far more accessible in many regions. But the same is not in Nigeria, because in Nigeria, affordability continues to pose a major challenge, and it is still out of the reach of most Nigerians. So in a country where you have over 200 million people, you just have a very, very small number able to afford, air travel. The report is indicating that just 40 flights per 1,000 people were taking in 2023. 40 flights per 1,000 people. That means that you had 960 people who were unable to afford the airfare. Okay, so you are saying that even though you can see the decrease if you're looking at, maybe costs per dollars or something like that, but it's less affordable for people even now than it used to be. I mean, that's not a good thing.
We're having a conversation one day, and someone was like, if you travel a lot across Nigeria with air, you probably would see people you see constantly. You probably see the same people.
The same faces.
Yeah, the same faces. And I think that is one of the conversations that we try to explain to our leaders, right, our policymakers, that we are a very low consuming nation. Our consumption levels is extremely low. Now, would the theory that if we had more Nigerians flying, right, would the prices be lower than what it is? The truth is yes, right, because marginal costs would definitely would reduce as we have more numbers,
more volume.
So what happens is that the cost of maintenance of these airlines is almost still the same, right? It's almost fixed, right? One way, if an airline is redundant, you still need to maintain either way, right? So if we can solve that issue, we need to solve an issue of Nigerian population being able to consume a lot, right? Because if you cannot solve that problem, no matter what the policy, no matter what the infrastructure is, it would not make sense. And that is why you see when Labour was clamoring for a 200,000 minimum wage, for example. We understand that is an ideal conversation for the kind of how bad our purchasing power has eroded over the years. And if we do not solve this, because air travel again in different climes is not a
luxury.
It's exactly not a luxurious. It's just like any other, just like your train, just like your. So some people even decide, even probably would do air because probably air might even be cheaper than even the trains or even trying to drive. So, and that's because if you check their airports, the number of airlines that fly out of these countries, in fact within the country, you look at the numbers. So even for Africa's travel, I know we've talked about Africa travel before, that is expensive. It's even difficult to seek connecting flight because Africans don't even travel. It's even an African median. If you look at the African average of consumption, it is low. So that is why you see that it's not even a very big conversation across board. So this figure from IATA is just to reflect what we've been talking about, right? And it is something that going into the next decade, even the current ministers and all stakeholders should begin to look at what can we do. Yes, from their own end, there's really nothing they can do because some of those costs in terms of air travel is almost, but when considering safety and all those, you have to.
No, but it's not just that. If you look at the breakdown of your flights, you look at the taxes that these airlines also have to pay to the government.
Exactly.
Those also compound how much you have to pay because those are not going down; they're going up.
Of course,
right?
They're even going. They're going to.
And they're going to go up even more next year. So maybe it's time for the government to sit down and look at it and see air travel contributes to your economy if it actually robust. It contributes to trading, contributes to investment, contributes to tourism. Because you cannot make it difficult for people to travel.
Governors are building airports all over the place.
Who's using them? They're just, monuments at this point. Anyway, we're going to go on a very quick break. When we return, we're going to piggyback off this conversation, looking at what is going on in Nigeria economically. Like I told you earlier, the World Bank report is out. Federal government is contesting it, of course, per usual. But we'll tell you about what that report actually says. There's a lot. So stay with Rapid TV, still Business Lens. Nigeria's economy, the global markets. What does it all mean for you? From stock market insights to global financial news you need to know. From Wall Street to the Main Street and of course the marketplace. Get the answers you need every week on Business Lens with me, Faith Dafford Joseph, as I bring into focus the stories, strategies and shifts shaping our economy. No angle is missed as I talk about the business, the people, patterns and possibilities behind them. Welcome to the Business Lens.
Rapid TV, rooted in truth, driven by impact.
You are still watching Business Lens here on Rapid TV. And yes, let's talk about the World Bank's report, right? So there's a World Bank report that was launched entitled Nigeria Development Update, from Policy to People, bringing the reform gains home. So this was published, on Wednesday, and you had the World Bank Country Director of Nigeria, Matthew Verghese, actually talking about this and, of course, sharing highlights of this particular report. And some of the things that the World Bank pointed out, which were very interesting. So the World Bank talks about the poverty level and ratio in Nigeria all the time, right? So it is something that we always get these numbers that the federal government always disputes. Anyway, so the latest one, the World Bank is telling us that despite Nigeria's recent economic stabilization efforts, about 139 million citizens are now living in poverty. And the World Bank is warning that the country risks losing reform gains if it fails to translate into tangible improvement in people's welfare. Okay, so this is a biannual flagship report, that the World Bank publishes. And so it says that the bold reforms, they commended the bold reforms, the reforms in the exchange rate, subsidy regime, the foundational steps, right? So what it also means is that if it's foundational, you have to now build on it because it's the foundation, right? So what the World Bank is saying is that, yes, you have implemented these bold reforms and it's good. You have established a foundation. But if you are not able to build on it, you are going to cause more harm than good, right? And it says that the reform, funny enough, he actually said that the reforms are yielding results, growth is picking up, revenues are rising, debt indicators are improving, foreign exchange market is stabilizing, reserves are climbing, and inflation is gradually easing. But these results have not yet translated. Okay, saying that this macroeconomic improvement, because all of these macroeconomic, reforms, they are yet to translate into improving conditions for ordinary Nigerians. Many households are still struggling with eroded purchasing power. You still have a lot of Nigerians spending over 70% of their income on food, and food inflation is still high up there. So, you know, and this is an increase because just in April, you had the number at 129 million. That means between April and now, you have had more people, 10 million more people slip into poverty. And this is also a number that is staggering if you consider that in 2023, when the reform started, you had 87 million people in poverty, right? But now you have 139 million, right, in poverty. And the World Bank is saying, see, you have to do a lot more to make sure your macroeconomic reforms translate into the improvement of the quality of life of your citizens. If not, you are going to risk losing whatever gains you thought you had from this. Tell me your thoughts on this, because I'm still going to, of course, shift to some of the, components that they pointed out. But let me get your thoughts.
I think that, was it last week or 2 weeks ago, we were having a conversation around, I think it was the DG of WTO. I was talking about the fact that economic stabilization, and we're talking about, yes, you've done the initial step, which is to stabilize a very staggering and sinking ship, right? But you cannot celebrate. You get
just stability.
Yeah, because that is the basics. That is the start. That you can't say after they running. So yes, you can't celebrate I've started, because you just said. So the reason why you are here, because normally, if the previous administration did so well, it had just been a continuation of what they are doing. But now they create so much chaos that you first need to stabilize before you start working, and that is so you cannot celebrate stabilizing, because that is the barest minimum required of you, right? Then next, in fact, I think I was hearing the former Central Bank governor, the emir, also praised.
Yes, they praised the new CBN and stability they've introduced.
The stability, everybody is a global.
Everybody has acknowledged it.
Exactly. So you cannot praise the stability as an achievement, because it is where what you would have anybody would have done that. Anybody is required to have done that. So I've said, okay, you want to start working, stabilize the ship first, right? When you stabilize the ship, so what is the next phase of conversation? And that has always been my worry, particularly when it comes to subsidy removal, for example. I feel like low prices on a general scale is what makes people have enough disposable income to consume more, right? But if you raise prices, which the subsidy removal actually did cost, right? Then you're not making more money for yourself as a government. But what is the lag period between you having so much money, right, to do a lot of things, and the fact that you actually do those things that you said you would do? And that is usually the problem. That is what has been the biggest issue of the majority of African governments, because they make so much money, right? In fact, they make so much money, but they don't necessarily translate this money into creating wealth for the people, right? Because now I'm seeing in the same 2-year period, we cannot point to, and I'm happy even when the president was mentioning his 12-point agenda. That it did not necessarily say we've completed a 2 kilometers of roads in the same period. Instead, it was focused on the 2 projects, the Calabar Coastal and the Badagry Sokoto Highway. So what about the existing ones that would almost instantly create wealth for your people, or almost instantly their cost of living suddenly just come down, and they can now begin to make more money? So those things are not still being solved, and that is a big problem. Now we're having taxes coming up. Yes, telling us this tax reforms is fantastic, but how is it going to be translating directly? Yes, you're most likely going to make more money, but what about your people?
Exactly. And I'm talking about the people, like you said, there are different components to the World Bank's report, because they also released the Pulse for Africa, which also captured a lot of things in Nigeria as well. One of these ones talked about 98 million Nigerians currently facing job-related challenges. That is the highest figure recorded in sub-Saharan Africa. What is very interesting is that we have not had employment figures released in recent times, especially after it was rebased or the methodology was changed. If you want to look at that, saying, we're now using the ILO methodology and things like that, even though we do not operate an hourly based system in Nigeria. But this World Bank report is talking about how unemployment is extensive in Africa, and Nigeria is leading the charge with about 98% of its people facing job-related challenges. And so, aside that, the World Bank also comes to say that, look, this idea that you are going to have inflation at single digits even next year is unrealistic. It's like almost like a pipe dream. According to that, saying that the ambition of the federal government to achieve a single-digit inflation in the short term is unrealistic, and that Nigeria remains amongst a handful of African countries still grappling with high consumer price inflation. I mean, I'm very happy that they're very specific. High consumer price inflation. And if you look at the countries that were cited here, Angola, Ethiopia, Ghana, Malawi, Sudan, Zambia, Sao Tome, and Principe, and Zimbabwe, they will continue to record double-digit inflation rates across 2025. And that's while 37 of these 47 big economies are projected to maintain single-digit inflation by 2026, Nigeria remains an outlier. So it's not just for 2025 that you're going to have, double digits. Even for 2026, Nigeria remains an outlier due to persistent structural challenges, including currency depreciation, high food and energy prices, and supply bottlenecks, and continued to fuel price instability, as well. And, if you look at the projection of the federal government, looking at getting 50% this year and then translating to a single-digit inflation target by next year, because they feel like with all the reforms and everything, according to the president, we have turned the tide, the worst is over, so we're going to start, growing from here. And the World Bank is saying, don't rejoice too soon. There are a lot of other issues that you need to take care of. There's unemployment. There's the fact that you still have high consumer price inflation. There's the fact that your people still cannot afford to buy food. You have over 70%, you have a lot of Nigerians spending over 70% of their income on just purchasing food. And the World Bank is saying, hey, these are problems that you need to deal with, right? But there was also a sort of positive, which is like, okay, well, if you accept this, maybe accept all the rest as well. The World Bank is talking about the external position of the country strengthening. Foreign reserves has exceeded $42 billion, which is good. And then you have, on the fiscal side, you have federal deficits actually going to go higher. It's not changing from 2024. But what it also now shows is that your debts to GDP, you have a high chance of it dropping below 40%, which is a good thing, right? So those are some of the things that the World Bank pointed out. But the Nigerian government is reacting to this, and they're saying, no, we do not agree with what you are saying. So according to the federal government, they're saying this does not really reflect the economy in Nigeria. So talk to me about that, how you feel about, the Nigerian government coming to say, well, we don't agree with whatever it is that you're saying about the economy. It's not true. It's not right. We refuse it.
Okay, so when I saw the response, it was a bit, I don't know how to basically term it. Because the term, I think in 2018 was when the living household survey, an household survey from the NBS that talks about I think $1 per day. That if $1 per day, using the benchmark of $1 per day as what a Nigerian can consume expenditure to calculate who is below the poverty line, right? So I think the response from the president is that this particular data is looking at $2 per day, right? And $2 per day, by the time you term it, that's 3,000 naira, or 3,100 or 200 naira. By the time you look at it, that's around 100,000 in a month, and the minimum wage in Nigeria is 70,000. So that benchmark, according to the presidency, is that it is not reflective of what is obtainable in Nigeria, because minimum wage. So now the question then is,
so is it more important to look at the benchmark, or actually how your people are living?
So that is well. So the question then that I would have actually posed to the presidency is, so someone is working doesn't mean they are poor, or what exactly is your own concept of poverty? Because poverty is about the consumption level, it's about the expenditure level, not about what. In fact, if someone is even working, right, there's a tendency to be poorer than someone that is not, because then when you calculate the costs, I calculate the cost, right? In fact, the dependents, people we call dependent, are richer than some people actually.
Oh
not.
yeah, actually.
So when you calculate the cost, right? Someone was talking about the fact that just one egg is already 300 naira, right? So that's already
300, 350.
Exactly. That's already almost 10% of what the person is required to spend a day, right? So when you look at transport, and that's why when we talk about the fact that the subsidy was not properly done, these are the reasons why. Because price levels has gone from 0 to almost over 100, right? And these people are still struggling to even get the minimum wage. You say you've pushed the price. So people are literally living, right, in extreme poverty while being in quote actively. And that's what the World Bank is also saying about the fact that, and I think many people are saying they are not necessarily working. This is not work. A lot of Nigerians have resulted to loans, a lot of bad loans. If you ask the institutions, they are wondering so many non-performing.
I mean, and that's why you have the proliferation of all those loan apps as well.
And if you see those loan apps, they have so much high interest, but a lot of people have defaulted because it is in a country whereby it is not. People are not making money. People don't have money, right? So it is only a government that is detached from its people that would come up to say no.
I mean, because how can you argue and say, how can your argument be, oh, our people only need $1 a day to live, as opposed to you striving to make sure that your people get over $2 to live, which is the global standard.
Exactly.
Now you're saying don't judge us by the global standard, judge us by our own, standard, which is our informal economy. But then, when you want to purchase things internationally, maybe for government use, you want to get an Escalade or you want to get, a Cadillac or something like that. That's global standard, right?
Global standard.
You have to have different kinds of jets for your executive to travel, or you have to have different people traveling with executive. That is global standard. But when it comes to the living wage of your people, you know what? No, we don't do global standards
because
here.
Then
why is that your argument?
How will MBS tell a Nigerian that because he or she works 2 hours a week
she has a job?
like so you get and that is why till tomorrow I will always fault when you look at the problems we're facing, particularly from policymakers. There's a lot of them have to do with data. I talked about it was last week. That further we don't even have a labor data, right? Of okay, this is how many jobs are being lost. This is how many jobs are being gained, right? It doesn't give anybody anywhere, right? Even from the Ministry of Labor to trade anything, that there is an urgent need to solve certain problems, and this is why for countries like Africa or third or the emerging economies, I will always tilt towards a socialist approach. Why? Because when it comes to when you're saying you want to allow the markets to be a market-driven economy, the job of government that requires setting up infrastructures, setting up systems that allow these things to run effectively, is not usually done. It's more like it's market-driven. So let's just go and rest, because now you've made almost 3 times 4. Now you're telling us debt to GDP is so low, debt to revenue is so down. Now you have so much money.
Where you plug in the money?
Exactly. So that is why I would never, for a country like Nigeria, where the trust coefficient of government really being effective with whatever revenue it gets is almost less than 20%. I would never trust them. I would prefer a subsidy where the prices are low. People can actually still create wealth, and the wealth can possibly luckily translate, and that's
trickle down.
Exactly, trickle down. That is what has been happening over the years. We pay subsidies and prices are low. People are wealthy.
Because now that you have more money, there's no change to the welfare of the people. In fact, it's getting worse.
It's worse.
And you're fighting those numbers just because.
Why is your problem in numbers? Why are you not saying this is what we've been? And that's why I said during the Independence Day speech, I said you cannot tell me you've done something when the people that are meant to be a recipient of the things you've done cannot come out and say, yeah, so that kind of broadcast should have been, okay, we are going into the streets, right? Oh, how has your life changed, right? So how has it been better?
No, you should live live on less than $1 per day. That's your reality as a Nigerian. That's brutal. Anyway, let's quickly look at this these figures as we wrap up. So this data is talking about African countries with the highest borrowing rate in September 2025. I talked about Ghana being able to bring theirs down. Well, Nigeria is still really high, but we are number 2. So first on the list you have Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe is at 35% when you look at interest rates. Nigeria comes very fast after that, 27%. Egypt is at 22.5%. You have Sierra Leone coming after that at 21.75%. Ghana is 21.5%, while you have Angola at 19%, the Gambia 17%, Zambia 14.5%, Kenya 9.5%, and South Africa at 7%. South Africa is actually really quite low for their interest rates, but maybe they don't need it as much as we do.
So
I mean, all the macroeconomic things are probably working for them, so they don't need it.
So, no, of course, South African economy is really struggling, but I think that you make a choice, right? When you have an economy that is vibrant, that even if you are down economic-wise in terms of the figures, the only way you can get by economy back is to increase manufacturing, increase industry's performance. Yes, you would you won't be thinking about increasing interest rates, because then that is a problem.
So now we are sacrificing expansion of the economy
to get FPIs.
For FPIs. Okay, I don't know if that's a good thing, but we are right below, Zimbabwe. Right below Zimbabwe. It's not a good thing anyway. But thank you very much.
Shout out to Zimbabwean people.
I mean, they've been in the struggle for a longer time. Anyway, thank you very much, Daniel, for being a part of the conversation. So with Rapping TV, we have, news coming up at the other side of the hour, as at 12 o'clock. But, you can always catch this program again on, of course, our YouTube and on our socials. So do check that out. All right, enjoy the rest of your day. My name is Faith Dafa Joseph. I will see you on Monday.